So we are sketching this today. This is Castle Combe in the Cotswolds, and it's a lovely wintry snow scene. So we're thinking quite hard about how can we paint snow. Please let me know, what do you think of this? Is this effective? It's a really simple technique, and for me simple is often the most beautiful and often the most fun. But what do you think? Let me know, and let's get sketching and see how we can take a normal village reference photo or be sat in a normal village and add lots of fun snow and wintry feel to our final sketch. So let's start with sketching the village. So I've got my A5 sketchbook here opened up. There's about an A4 piece of paper in front of me really. And we're just going to do a really loose sketch because the main thing we're focusing on today is how can we get that feeling of snow. I'm going to start down the street and just come forward with these kind of vertical lines outlining these individual houses and just kind of marking out where I think the houses are going to get to, and then as we get closer we can start going, right, let's add in this roof, and we can hopefully, you can see I'm at this house in the foreground which is at the very edge. We've got a sort of lamppost, not lamppost, a street sign in front of it, and it's the closest house in the aisle. All I'm doing is just getting those big shapes. We've got this wall as well, and we've got this kind of hedge. I'm just trying to simplify things into simple shapes at this stage, and we don't want too much detail because actually the thing about snow is it's kind of all about the shadows and leaving things white and adding the appropriate shadows. Too many lines will get in the way potentially of some of those shadows. We can always add more lines later. So more than ever today, really just focus, or at least my plan is really just to focus on adding those big shapes rather than being too worried about all the little details, especially at the beginning. We've got these houses sort of disappear off into the distance. We can gradually make out more and more of these triangular roofs. But again, not too much detail because we want these roofs to be nice and white. Do you see, just by building up these shapes, suddenly we've got something which is pretty clearly resembling, for me at least, a nice row of houses. We can just bring lines closer and closer with these doors and suggestions of windows as well. We haven't really sketched the houses, we've just suggested them all the way forward. And again, don't want to make too much of the bottom of the houses because we might decide there's a load of snow there. I'm going to just add the window here. And this house is where we're just being a little bit more cautious because it is in the foreground. It does have some details we're going to have to add. Doesn't mean we have to keep it totally true to life, of course, but just a little bit more cautious. Then we come to the other side of the street, and here we just want to measure where does this house actually come to. So the roof, the ridge line, the eaves comes to just the middle of these other houses, and the bottom of the house is actually level with about there, and everything else is just coming forward at quite a steep angle really. And we're going to continue off just onto the beginning of the other page and see how much house we want to get in on the other page. And we've got our nice chimney here. Another lovely chimney just on this page. These kind of just looking, where do these houses meet? They meet about there. It's all just comparing, contrasting, rather than being 100% accurate. We're being sort of accurate relative to each other. A couple of windows here. Nice door here. Funny little windows here as well. And you see how simple, I do keep saying it, but you see how simple all of this is. Just a really simple sketch, enough to capture the feel of the place, I hope. At least for me it does. but not too much, not an overwhelming amount of detail. Just get the streets bending, disappearing off into the distance, and then this kind of selection of trees in the background which frames everything rather nicely. And there we go, so we've got our sketch. Didn't take too long, nice and simple. How can we start thinking about how we're going to add snow? Well, I'm going to start with the sky, where there isn't any snow, or at least not yet. What we'll do is we'll just do a nice gently sort of moody sky, that kind of wintry sky. It can still have some nice crisp blue, so I'm just going to put my cobalt and some moon glow on the page, and then we can just move that around and bring it just to that line of trees, and don't let it go onto the roof too much. Okay, so we kind of create a nice crisp outline where our sky just really meets but doesn't flow over into the rest of our scene. And why is that? Because, well, if we're imagining snow, then snow settles on the top of things, doesn't it? So we want this tree line, we're thinking how are we going to get that to feel snowy, and the roofs, how are we wanting that, how are we going to get that to feel snowy? Then I think what we'll do, we'll skip the trees which can have snow, we'll skip the roofs which can have snow, and we'll move to the houses, and we'll just apply some nice loose colours onto those. So I'm going to take a lunar earth, you could use a burnt sienna or a yellow ochre or something like that, and I'm going to take a quinacridone magenta. Again, you could use another magenta or red, anything you like really. All I'm going to try and do is get the feel of these kind of slightly warm, villagey walls by using a different array of these two colours. So on one side I've got mostly lunar earth here, but then we can pick up a bit of the magenta and wash that into the walls as well. And we're just trying to create a little bit of variation. So we get a bit more magenta on this side. And maybe even let's pick up something else. Let's just get some quinacridone in on the other side. Just these nice warm colours. We're not trying to be super realistic. We're just trying to be representative of the type of thing we've got going on, which are these warm Cotswold bricks. And there we are, and again I'm just trying to keep the tops of things clear. So we even got the background here, we've got the wall, the foreground here, we've got another wall. Just keeping the tops of things nice and clear. And that's kind of got us to the point where we need to start thinking about the snow. So let's start with our trees. I'm going to take a green, I've got a Cascade green, and I'm going to need to use my size 6 brush. I might even change to a smaller brush. We'll see how clumsy I'm feeling today. Now confident. I'm going to mix my green with a little bit of Scarlet Lake. That will neutralise it a bit. And then we're going to just work from the bottom up, because snow is white, or mostly white, and that makes painting snow all about the shadows. So you need to get the shadows in. The shadows are the darkest, highest values at the bottom. It's okay that this is mixing, so don't worry about that. And then as we move up, we want to sort of just keep varying our wash a little bit. But we're starting to just paint these little patterns where there's a lot of white, a lot of snow being sort of capturing bits of the tree. And again, just vary the wash a little bit, and then as we come up we can do the same. So you're almost leaving little layers or pockets of white in all the trees. And just sort of painting leaf-like shapes, these kind of random wiggles and waggles. Might even want to just pick up a bit of moon glow or something just to get some real dark. And then you can see I've made the bottom too green, or the top not green enough, so let's darken the bottom. And then I'm just going to pick up a little bit of green and drop that in a few places as well. Okay, So it doesn't look like much yet, but what we'll do, if we just clean off our brush, make it fairly dry, and we can just soften a few of those edges. So we want this natural feel, and I want the crispest whites to very much be at the top of this image. So we can soften and blend some of these other areas. We can start adding in a few sort of fields of branches as well. But we want the crispest whites just to be at the top, where all the snow in theory has settled. Now we're onto our houses. So I'm going to use a shadow colour this time. So I'm going to use Moon Grey, you could use Payne's Grey, you could also mix a brown and a blue, like a burnt umber and a ultramarine to get a nice shadow colour. I'm going to use Moon Grey though, and we're going to start thinking about the shadows. We'll use the shadows from the image itself. So let's just get these initial shadows in, and then we can spread them out a little bit more. But then how do we get that feel of snow? Well, we need to find some more shadows, don't we? So we can do things like pop a shadow in the back here, and snow sort of sits in waves and in rifts, and we need to find where those waves are. Now a nice neat idea on roads is that you often have tyre marks. So you can take an almost dry brush and just bring those sort of tyre marks in. Let's just get a little bit more of our shadow going, and we need to bring that shadow up the houses as well, because the shadows, the light source is coming here, just like in the reference we got shadow down these houses. We need to just start unifying our colour scheme a little bit, and that will help us to really understand a bit more about how our shadows are building up. And we just show that there's a different plane by adding a bit more shadow there, even a bit more, and under the roof as well. And we're just moving around again. And so now how do our shadows look? Well, we can deepen some of these, and it's all about just adding little bit. Probably a little bit too dense pigment there, so let's just try again, because what I want to try and do is now start getting those just random wafts of shadow. So I'm imagining, as I go around, okay, look, there's a lump of shadow here, so it's going to have a lump of snow, sorry, so it's going to have a shadow around there, and then it's going to have a crisp outline. So you've got this lump. We have to build the lump the wrong way around. We have to build it by adding the shadow. So you can kind of see the shadow as it comes round these lumps. We're just imagining them and just trying to build them in our mind's eye. And it doesn't have to be perfect. These fairly random shapes will also do well, like these sort of dry brushed marks we've got. And I'm going to give that a break and see what it looks like when it's dried, and then we'll move back to adding a bit more of our greens, a bit more green shadows, because we've got to do our bush here. And that could be a bit more green, it's a bit closer, or seeing a bit more of it. But we also want lots of these lovely shadows. And then on the top we can still apply the same sort of shadow principles. So we just get a nice bit of white and dot it around with some shadow. Need to add some shadow to this wall as well. So just everything is about the shadows, really. Everything in this is about the shadows, and creating nice crisp changes between shadow and not shadow. There we go. And then we've got the roofs we haven't touched yet at all. So let's have a little think about those. So using the same shadow colour, just our chimneys can pop with a bit of that shadow. Just make sure you're getting the right bit of the chimney which is in shadow. And then these sides of roofs and things, so these angles are all shadowed. And then we just need to be getting in these little ruffles of shadow again. They're just these little touches of shadow which come from the snow pooling over the tiles. This side needs a shadow. We'll get a few more, just little dots of shadow in here and there. And also in these windows, the doorways. And we're just gradually moving around, building it up. And we're almost there, I would say. So what's the last couple of bits we can do? Well, a few little splashes add to that randomness. But another thing we can do, so we could leave it there. I'd be happy to leave that there. Frame it nicely, call it a snowy scene. I think it works quite well. And we've got those ideas of little drips and drops of shadows. Got these marks of tyres coming round. Another thing that you can do is splash some white gouache on there. You've got two options actually. So you can use a Posca pen, that splashes quite nicely. Or you can literally just grab some gouache, some white opaque paint. And I'll do the latter today. I'll use my gouache since I've got it out. So we just want a nice amount there. And a few little touches. And actually going all over the image can give that nice effect of snowfall. Now, gouache can spread lots, so it's difficult sometimes to control exactly where your little drops are going. So it might also be an idea to come in and literally dot them in yourself. A bit more time consuming, of course. This does let you sort of, if you've gone mad and filled out too much space, you can gain some white back. So let's say we want to put a bit more white into this tree, we can gain our white back by using a bit of gouache in there. Equally, you could use a Posca pen to do the same thing. There's probably going to be too much splashing now, but what I'll do, I'll show you anyway. And all you do is you can just tap. Have to be quite vigorous. Sometimes you have to give it a bit of a shake, but you can get that white in, and the white tends to be a little bit more contained. It's very easy to come in and do some dotting around as well. So you can get lots of this nice snowfall effect going. Now I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm going to see what I can do with a bit of pen just to bring out that snow effect a little bit more. Okay, so we're nice and dry now. My page is curled up a little bit, so just going to add another little clip, and we're going to come back in with our pen and think, how can we achieve more of that snow effect, that winter effect, with a bit more pen? Well, again, it's all about shadows and shapes. So the first thing, I'm going to do my normal thing and find more of my pen work, which is faded into the background with all the colours. But we're going to be conscious about not overlapping where we've sort of invented a bit of snow. So not all these lines have to be continuous. And then we can do things like create more bold shadows for the windows. And even for our little chimneys. As we're moving around, so a little bit of dampness there, but as we're moving around we might identify shadows we've missed. So for example, these chimneys should all have a little quite dense shadow, so easy to just add with a bit of pen work. This is where we can just hatch a little bit and enhance some of these shadows. Come down with these vertical lines again, the windows again, and with these triangular roofs just sort of jutting out. And also with things like this pavement edge. And then where we've got our little shadows, we can enhance them a little bit with a bit more road texture, a bit more, tiny bit more line work and things. Our trees here, we can just bring out a few more twigs and things with our, again, just a little bit of loose line work. We can embolden the top edge of this tree line to make it clear that it stops there and there's actually something in the way, snow in the way. We can create more twig marks, again just emphasizing to the observer what these trees are. That's sort of filled with stickiness because it's winter and that's what they look like. And we just move around gently adding a few bits and bobs wherever we want to. Always just stop, look, check you haven't gone too far, or check you're not getting towards going too far. And I always think it's amazing how actually these touches of black make it feel so much more wintry. And I'm going to call that done. So that's my little wintry village scene. And it's all about the shadows. Barely anything that we've done today has been anything except thinking about shadows. Tiny bits of loose colour for the bricks, everything else all about shadows. So hope you've enjoyed that. Certainly one of the things I find the hardest to do. So be interested on your thoughts. Do you think this is effective, or have you got other better tips? Please do let me know. And if you do enjoy, please like, subscribe, and thank you very much for watching.